All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bhakta. I'm a pharmacy administrative resident at Houston Methodist Hospital and a master's candidate at University of Houston College of Pharmacy. Today we'll continue our series on project management, and this will be part 3 of maintaining momentum of a project. This will build upon the previous presentations by the Houston program. So when we talk about project management and maintaining momentum, there are 2 essential features that are important in every project. No matter how simple or complicated they are. They must be, 1, planned out well in advance, and 2, they must be controlled so that the desired results are achieved. So I really want to focus my presentation today as the third part of the maintaining the project series on the project control aspect of project management. So in definition, project control is really an analytical process that's used to predict, understand, and influence the outcomes of a project. These are sort of the pillars of project control, the wide overarching pillars: scope, cost, time, and quality. But there are 3 things or 3 roles that the project manager ends up taking in terms of project control. And I want to delve into those a little bit more so that way we can take away some practical aspects of project control. So implementation and control, I want to keep the focus on control. So the role of the project manager falls into these 3 areas: managing the key stakeholders, managing the project life cycle, and managing performance of your team. And I'll go into each of these as the presentation moves on. So when we talk about managing stakeholders as the first part of this lecture, we'll determine what's important. So stakeholders' interests must be monitored to ensure that their support and interest is maintained. And we must ensure that their views and ideas are being adequately reflected in project development, and their personal success criteria are being pursued and achieved. When presenting to your stakeholders, you must account for all environmental change before reporting out, so that way that can be fully accounted for. The real key here is referring to the initial project charter. So that shows how important creating an effective and well-established project charter is. You want it to be as detailed as possible so that way your stakeholders' interests are already defined before the project begins. So when doing that, there's a few ways of keeping the stakeholders engaged. Some of these fall into how data is displayed to your key stakeholders, how often you communicate these results to your stakeholders regarding your project. So the project charter, here's just an example that I pulled up. It really has some of the key essential elements for a good project charter. In addition to this, what I wanted to show is that the charter should also include a decision-making hierarchy structure. Really want to avoid consensus decision-making as a part of your project team. You need to have a decision-making structure, whether it be at an executive, director, management, or committee level, or a subcommittee level for that. So that way decisions are made in a timely manner and are sent up the chain, and a project is effectively controlled for time and cost. So managing the stakeholders, again, it's about leveraging the data to drive the discussion and decision making. For stakeholders, a lot of the stakeholders in project management are really executives and leaders in your institution. So you really have to take into account how you're going to portray the data. You need to know the type of stakeholder audience. Is it your executive, your president, your direct manager? You really need to know what's important to those stakeholders before you choose which type of data you're going to display and how you're going to explain the data. Just some examples of ways to display some of the data from your project are using Pareto charts, control charts, dashboards with key performance indicators or metrics is one of my personal favorites, and statistical illustrations are also very good for those who are heavily focused on research and would like evidence supporting that effects are truly caused by the interventions that your project is actually causing those effects. So the key here is to let the data tell the story. You don't want to have to be enforcing what or reiterating what your project is about. You should really just show your data, and it should tell the story itself, and you should only have to step in there to support your data. So the next part of the project implementation and control is managing the project lifecycle. We went through this as a series, and we'll still conclude with closing out a project, but There are just certain aspects of managing the project lifecycle from a project control standpoint, and those are just for you to stay on track internally, and it makes it easier for you to show your stakeholders to how well you're staying on track with your schedule. So these are just some tools that I've actually personally used. The one on the left is a personal example from one of my projects. There's different formats that you can use to stay on track, different tools you can use. Status reports, those can tell the story very quickly if you have them archived well. Gantt charts, you can divide a line at any point in this Gantt chart, and you can find out which project steps are on time and which are not on time, which are delayed, what your critical paths are. If something is delayed, does it have a downstream effect? So Gantt charts are a personal favorite too. There are certain programs, Microsoft SharePoint, things like that, that help with Gantt charts and display of Gantt charts. So measuring the change and displaying the data is also very important. So the impact that your project has, through your project charter, you'll have goals set out, and those goals should be smart, measurable. Anything that's measurable you can control it. So the impact of changes here in this graphical display of progress for this example project, you're able to see and adjust your baseline as you move forward with the project. So you never want to be taking a step back, especially if you're making progress in your project. So you reestablish your baseline as you progress forward with your project. Now the dashboard view, this is another personal project example that I want to show. Setting thresholds or goals for your project in terms of key metrics and key performance indicators is vital, so that way you know which milestones are achieved as you progress through the project, and you know where to dig deeper if you're not achieving those milestones. So it's good to set tiered goals, so that way you know how well you're coming along to meeting your ultimate goal. And this is a view that I think a lot of stakeholders and different types of audiences would actually prefer, because it's really driven from the project charter itself. So that way the executives or leadership, they already know what goals you're after, and they can see your progress and how far you are from reaching your end goal. So I'm really a fan of dashboard views for that purpose. But again, you have to gauge your audience and understand what their preference is and what type of data you're trying to show them. So a graphical display can also be a good solution. So again, another part of managing the project lifecycle is the iterative feedback loop. So you don't just keep continuing on with a project, going through the motions, the same committee meetings, and just keep doing what you're doing. So the biggest thing is to collect information on your progress. That can be done through that graphical display of information, and then you analyze and process information, what is causing it, and then integrate that information, and then measure your returns after you've implemented project controls, and then you go on and you continue this feedback loop. So you continue this iterative feedback loop. And that's a continuous project control mechanism, so that way your goals are not left unattended. So the third part of project implementation and control is managing performance. There's managing your team's performance, individuals, managing them as a team, as a group. So there's different things that need to be described here in terms of managing team performance. As a project manager, you have to understand that there's group and individual behavior. So in a group, you can have destructive team member profiles that you must address really early on, and you have individual behavior which may differ from the group behavior in certain situations. So it's really good to understand who your teammates are, and I think in project planning and initiation, this was discussed, developing a very cohesive team. And then there's other parts, so there's normative influence, what is really guiding decision making. Like I stated earlier, that you want to avoid consensus decision making, and you want to develop a hierarchy for decision making, so that way it's a robust process. So the flaws with consensus decision making are the normative influence in a group. So if all your group members are agreeing, you're more likely to agree. And then there's informational influence, where you believe that the other team members are more well informed than you are to make the decision. So then again, you agree with the majority decision. So that's some flaws in consensus decision making that you sort of want to avoid when managing your team and making decisions as a team. Use metrics and data-driven feedback. Again, the key of this project control management is using the data and leveraging the data and supporting it with your metrics to drive feedback for the group and the individuals within your group, those assigned to individual components of your project management. So you have to set some goals that are individual level and at the team level, so that way you can manage performance effectively when the time comes. Target results for performance, such as having a tier 1 goal, tier 2 goal, like I mentioned in the dashboard view. This can work for the individual and team level and help you control the project and the outcomes of the project. Another key thing is to minimize wastage of time in meetings that your project members may be working on apart from the times that they're actually at committee meetings, is to agree to debate the issues that come with the project and not the people. Because all team members have something to offer, and it's better to debate the issues and find the underlying problems rather than address people. Identify and address destructive team member profiles. This is something I wanted to spend a little bit of time on, because as an effective project manager, you have to understand these different types of members in your team and address them early on. Another step is performance management. I included this graphic because I kind of wanted to see what is really wrong here. So in the first half of the graphic, it shows that you're 250% more productive than anyone else in the office. And then the second one, this manager is saying that our hours begin at 8 a.m., not 8:05 a.m. You're 5 minutes late, you're fired. So does anyone kind of get what's going on here? So really the thing that's going on here is, in the first situation, you're managing performance or work and results. And in the second, you're managing people and behaviors. So what type of performance management aspect or viewpoint you want to take on your project, it really depends on the type of project. But if it's a result-driven project and you have goals and metrics, it's better to use a result or work-driven performance management style rather than individual and behavior management type of style. So just to follow up on the destructive team member profiles, these are just some of the people that we all may have been in at some point in any various projects that we've been involved in. There's always the yes person. This person is very much agreeable to all decisions made by the group and offers no objective viewpoints on decisions. There's a no person who's the chronic naysayer. And then there's a maybe person, the person who always is borderline between both and is very indecisive. And then there's the grenade. This one is one who, in situations, throws out a discussion-ending subject within a meeting and completely derails the project meeting. And then they think they know it all, which you would manage similarly to the grenade. You really need to address those two head-on. You value their input, but you tell them that no is not an option. Provide alternate decisions that they can take. And same thing is it's the same as goes for the maybe person. The yes person appreciate their agreeableness, but encourage decisiveness. The no person, that's again same with the grenade. You advise them that no is not really an option. You give them alternate solutions and encourage them or influence them to decide one way or the other. So I'm an example of one of these in various projects that I've had. So it really takes some self-reflection as a project manager to understand which roles you've taken on in projects and what your team members actually look like in terms of this. There are other team member profiles too. These were just some that I wanted to highlight and show how to manage or address. So in conclusion, so project implementation and control, again, 3 pillars were managing stakeholders, managing the project lifecycle, and managing performance of your team or individuals in your team. And that concludes the third part on maintaining a project, project momentum, part of the TED Talk series for the Houston program.